I'm going to get started with today's presentation, and it is entitled The Matrix Trilogy Decoded. What is the Matrix? What are the Matrix movies? The Matrix movies are, yes, science fiction stories, but what they really are allegories. So this term really has to be understood if anyone is not familiar with it. An allegory is a story, poem, or picture that can be interpreted to reveal a hidden or a coded meaning. What we're going to be doing here is decrypting that message. We're going to decode that message and show you what it's really about. What this science fiction trilogy is really about is our world, what's going on in our world. And an allegory typically teaches a moral or a political lesson of some kind. So, the allegory of the Matrix is actually about our world being under complete control. It's about the control system that is already in place in our world that we're already living in. And it's controlled by hidden forces or occult forces. It is an allegory about how this planet is being turned into a prison society, and that we're already really living in that prison society and are largely unaware of that fact, or at least the bulk of humanity is unaware of that fact. The people in this room are most certainly aware of it. But the good news about the Matrix, of the allegory of the Matrix trilogy, is that it also shows us the key. It shows us how we can get out of that prison society that has been built up all around us. So, each movie answers a different question. The first movie answers the question, what is the Matrix? When they're talking about, quote-unquote, the Matrix, what is that? What do they mean by that? And that's what the entire first movie gets into. The second movie answers the question, why are we in the Matrix? What are the causal factors that led to this condition? And I would suggest that this is why the second movie is wildly unpopular in comparison to the first movie. For people who can see the control system, at least, and are not resistant to at least seeing the controls in place in our world, they're still very resistant to understanding why that control system is in place and what's perpetuating it. And most unpopular of all is the third film. Because the third film answers the question, how do we get out of the Matrix? And that's the information that people are actually the most resistant to hearing. Because that involves deep internal change in a person's thoughts, emotions, and actions. And that's the thing that they're the most resistant to. So that's why I would suggest the second and third movie did not nearly gain the traction of the first one. So let's start in and take a look at the first movie, which answers the question, what is the Matrix? The film begins in a hotel called the Heart of the City. So it's starting at the heart. This is very highly symbolic, as we will see, because one of the things people miss in this movie is that it begins and ends in the same place, in the heart. Okay? It actually comes around full circle, and Neo actually ends up in this building at the end of the film. Okay? So every movie, every one of the movies also begins with Trinity, the main female lead, played by Carrie-Anne Moss, in distress, in severe distress of some kind. Each movie starts with her under attack or in distress. Okay? Because she represents the feminine force that is in distress in our world. Okay? She's under attack by agents at the beginning of the first film. Agents of the state are what these agents in the Matrix represent. They represent people who are doing the bidding of the control system. Okay, the main hero of the film, played by Keanu Reeves, is Thomas Anderson, who is a software engineer. Okay, now, the Matrix is all an allegory dealing with software jargon, computer jargon, okay, software, hardware, internet, things like that. So, another thing a lot of people miss is that at the beginning of every film, the first time you ever see the main character, he is asleep. Every film. Okay? And this is suggestive. This is suggestive that we are asleep because Thomas Anderson represents the everyman. He is us. Okay? He represents our position as the average human being trapped in the matrix and asleep. Okay? Not having awoken yet. And he receives an encrypted message on his computer that says, "Wake up, Neo." See, that's his hacker name, Neo. We'll get into what that represents, the name. The Matrix has you. It owns you. Okay? And follow the white rabbit is the advice he's given. And that's suggestive, of course, Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass, which is also about a reality that is hidden from our view. So, his apartment is room 101. Now, this is a direct reference to 1984, the book by George Orwell. And room 101 in that film represents the place where your deepest fears are contained, that you have to go into. The protagonist of that movie had to go into near the end of the book. The book 1984 had to go into, and unfortunately, that movie has a very dark ending where The Matrix actually has a quite hopeful ending. But room 101 represents fear, and you see the one-eye symbolism as well here, with the character peeking out fearfully through the door. This is a scene where a bunch of other hacker types come to his house to take some code, to take some stolen information from Neo, who he has paid a couple $1,000s for at the beginning of the film. Now, the money stash that he uses is a book. It's a hollowed-out book. But this book is actually what inspired the film. Okay? It's a real book. It's by Jean Baudrillard. Okay? And it's called Simulacra and Simulation. And it is a book about how we are lost in the map and we are not even seeing the territory for what it is. It's a book about how our perceptions are completely misguided and we are misled into a dream world. And we're believing that the symbols and the map are the real world, and we're not even really paying attention to the real world. We're not paying attention to nature at all. Okay? So that's what that book is all about. I suggest people check it out, because it is really, along with some other spiritual teaching from different traditions, what the information that underlies the Matrix films. Now, the people who show up to give him the money, one of their girlfriends has this white rabbit on her shoulder. So you see synchronicity, the idea of synchronicity being injected into the film. He was just told, follow the white rabbit, a white rabbit appears. He decides to go along with that, stepping into the stream of synchronicity, and that leads him to a club where he meets Trinity, where Neo, Thomas Anderson, meets Trinity. Now, he never met her before, but he was aware of her reputation. Here's part of the conversation that takes place. Trinity says, I know why you're here, Neo. You're looking for him. I know because I was once looking for the same thing. And when he found me, he told me I wasn't really looking for him. I was looking for an answer. It's the question that drives us mad. It's the question that brought you here. You know the question just as I did. And Neo replies, what is the Matrix? That is the question that we're going to get an answer to. Trinity says, the answer is out there, Neo. It's looking for you, and it will find you if you want it to. So this is suggestive that the desire for truth must be present if we're going to find answers. And the person she's referring to, of course, is Morpheus, who we'll get to in a moment. Well, Morpheus represents the truth teller. He represents the one who is revealing the truth and helping to bring people out of the Matrix. So, the next slide is from Thomas Anderson's place of employment, which is a software company, and his boss, Reinhardt, says to him that he has a problem with authority, because that's what this movie is about. Authority being projected onto us and us believing in it, us accepting the notion that there's such a thing as authority in human form. And he says, I'll read part of the dialogue. He says, you have a problem with authority, Mr. Anderson. You believe that you are special, that somehow the rules don't apply to you. Obviously, you're mistaken. This company is one of the top software companies in the world because every single employee understands that they are part of a whole. So he's emphasizing the concept of collectivism, of giving yourself over to the collective instead of expressing your uniqueness and individuality. And he concludes by saying, thus, if an employee has a problem, the company has a problem. So, agents of the state show up to question Neo, and he doesn't know why they're there. So he's on the phone with Morpheus, and Morpheus says to him, I have been looking for you. I don't know if you're ready to see what I want to show you, suggesting that most people aren't ready. They're resistant. They don't want to see the truth. Okay? He says, but unfortunately, you and I have run out of time. And that's where we're at. We're at the time where it's no longer time to sugarcoat this information. We have to get it out there whether people are ready to hear it or not. So they come for, these agents of the state come for Neo, doesn't know why they want him, and they bring him to a holding center to interrogate him. So they're trying to inject him with fear and, bully him and, basically make him afraid. And one of the strangest scenes in the movie, one of the agents is able to actually make his lips melt together and silence him. And this suggests that what the agents of the state really want is to silence us. They don't want us speaking out. They want us afraid and they want us quiet. Afraid and quiet. And that would be playing into their hands. We have to speak up now more than ever. Also, they bug him. They hold him down and they put an electronic bug in his navel. Okay? And what this is suggested of is they're trying to keep you in fear that they're always listening to you. Oh, I can't post this on Facebook, it's under surveillance. I can't talk about this on the internet, they'll listen to what I'm saying. Well, shed all of that fear. Come out, speak the truth. If you're standing in the truth, nothing's ultimately going to stand in your way. I want the agents of the state to hear what I have to say, because maybe they'll learn something. Alright? So that fear needs to be shed. So he finally meets Morpheus. Again, Morpheus in Greek mythology represents the god of dreams. He is revealing the dream. That's what Morpheus actually means. Okay? And this is a famous meeting between Morpheus, Trinity, and Neo. And Trinity brings them together. Trinity, who represents our emotions, brings our action, which is the will, which is what Neo represents, into alignment with thought, which is what Morpheus represents. So let's take a look at these three characters and what they really represent allegorically. They are different aspects of our consciousness, of the expression of our consciousness. And Neo represents, well, I'll start with Morpheus. Our consciousness, the expression of our consciousness is composed of three modalities or dynamics. Our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions. These are the three ways we express our consciousness. Morpheus represents the mind. He is the thoughts aspect of consciousness. So he is the mind. He is our intelligence. When we use the mind, we're gaining knowledge. We're making a connection with truth. That's what Morpheus represents. That which is going to show us the truth. Okay? Trinity is the spirit. She is the sacred feminine, the heart, our compassion, love energy. That's what she represents. And again, she acts as the bridge between the two. The heart is the bridge between our mind and our will. The heart is the center. Our actions is represented by Neo. He is the will. He represents courage. He represents the exercise of conscience, doing that which we know to be right. And he represents our desire for freedom, for true freedom. Okay? So he is the will. When they meet, finally, when the thoughts reach out to the actions, to the will, and they finally meet in the Lafayette Hotel, Morpheus presents Neo with a choice, and here's how the dialogue goes. Morpheus says, "You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there is something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it is there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. Do you know what I'm talking about?" And Neo replies, "The Matrix." Morpheus says, do you want to know what it is? You want to know what the matrix is. The matrix is everywhere. It's all around us, even now in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window, when you go to church. When you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. And Neo asks, what truth? And Morpheus replies, that you are a slave, Neo. Yes.